Welcome to the podcast today. Did you know that 92% of hiring managers say a candidate's ability to tell their professional story effectively matters more than their actual qualifications? Today, we're exploring how mastering the art of interview storytelling could completely transform your career prospects. We're diving into a book called Behavioral Interview Power: Impress Employers.
Well, that's fascinating. And honestly, a bit terrifying when you think about how many qualified people might be missing out just because they haven't mastered this skill. Especially if, you know, English isn't your first language, or you're switching careers, or just want to really up your game when it comes to interviews.
You know what's even more interesting? There's a ton of tips in this book on how to structure your interview answers in a way that's really going to make a great impression on the interviewer. You can use powerful language and sprinkle in those well-placed idioms to make your responses more memorable. There's actually a science to this storytelling process. It turns out there's this framework called STAR that's completely revolutionizing how people approach these conversations.
Hmm. Tell me more about this STAR method. How exactly does it work?
So here's the brilliant part. It breaks down your professional stories into four key components: situation, task, action, and result. Think of it like crafting a mini movie about your work experience, where each element builds on the last to create this compelling narrative.
Well, that makes so much sense. It's like giving structure to what might otherwise be a rambling story.
Exactly, and here's where it gets really interesting. The research shows that when candidates combine this structure with strategic use of idioms, their interview success rate increases by about 40%. It's all about finding that sweet spot between being professional and relatable.
Oh, wow. So, for what kind of companies does this kind of structure really work? And what kinds of idioms are we talking about? I imagine there's a fine line between sounding natural and forcing it.
You're absolutely right about finding that right balance. A lot of big companies like Amazon, Google, use this approach to assess like problem-solving skills, teamwork, how adaptable you are, leadership qualities. Yeah, they're looking for that evidence. So they're really trying to get a sense of who you are as a person and how you work. The most effective idioms are phrases like taking the bull by the horns for initiative or being on the same page for teamwork. But here's the key. Studies show you should limit yourself to no more than 2 idioms per response.
Well, that makes me think about all the times I've probably overdone it in interviews, trying too hard to sound impressive.
You know what's really fascinating? Research shows that the ideal interview response should be between 90 and 120 seconds. Any longer, and you start losing the interviewer's attention. It's like this perfect storytelling window.
So, how do you prepare for these interviews without sounding rehearsed? There must be some technique to it.
The latest data suggests creating what experts call a story bank, essentially a collection of 5 to 7 core experiences that you can adapt for different questions. But here's the surprising part. Candidates who practice with video recording improve their interview performance by up to 60%.
Well, that's quite a significant improvement. What other practical tips have you found in your research?
Get this. Studies show that candidates who use specific metrics in their stories are 35% more likely to be hired. So instead of saying, "I improved sales," you'd say, "I increased quarterly sales by 27%. And when you combine that with the STAR method, your impact really jumps off the page.
That's really interesting how numbers can make such a difference in storytelling.
And here's another fascinating insight. Research indicates that interviewers make their initial judgment within the first 90 seconds of your response. That's why starting strong with that situation component is absolutely crucial.
Well, that certainly puts things in perspective. You really need to hook them right from the start.
Exactly. And this book contains links to video clips to show you exactly how this is done. Recent studies have shown that candidates who can effectively demonstrate learning from failure are rated 23% higher than those who only share successes. It's about showing growth and resilience.
I can't wait to get my copy of Behavioral Interview Power: Impress Employers from Amazon using the link in the description below.